Hey everyone! Today we're looking at a topic that impacts millions of lives but doesn't always get the attention it deserves: environmental justice. Let's break it down together, uncover some hard truths, and explore how we can all be part of the solution. Welcome everyone! Today we're tackling a huge issue: environmental justice. We hear this term a lot, but what does it really mean?
Right. At its core, environmental justice is about fair treatment for everyone, regardless of race, income, or location, when it comes to environmental laws and policies.
And that means everyone should have a voice in the decisions that affect their environment and health. But as we'll see, that's not always the case. So, one big part of environmental justice is understanding environmental racism. Have you come across that term before?
Oh, absolutely. It's been around for a while, and it acknowledges the reality that environmental hazards, pollution, toxic waste, industrial facilities, are disproportionately located in areas with predominantly minority or low-income populations. This isn't just a coincidence, it's systemic.
Exactly. In fact, a groundbreaking 1987 study called Toxic Wastes and Race found that race was the single biggest factor in determining where hazardous waste facilities were placed in the U.S., more significant than income, education, or other factors.
That's powerful. And unfortunately, this isn't just history, it's happening all around. Just look at the Flint water crisis.
Flint, Michigan, a predominantly black community, experienced one of the most shocking environmental injustices in recent history. In 2014, the city switched its water supply to the Flint River to save money. But this led to toxic lead contamination that affected thousands.
Right. And it wasn't just a small oversight. The decision's impact was devastating, especially on children. Flint's story reflects the broader issue of environmental racism, where certain communities bear the brunt of environmental hazards.
And Flint isn't alone. There have been similar issues in Washington, D.C., where poisonous lead contamination was also widespread. It's a cycle that just keeps repeating.
Another heavily impacted group is Indigenous communities. They've been forced to confront everything from toxic waste dumps to uranium mining on their lands for generations.
Right. Take the Standing Rock Sioux tribe's fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline, for instance. This movement spotlighted the long-standing struggle of Indigenous communities to protect their lands and water from environmental exploitation.
And beyond physical protection, it's about respect for treaties and their right to say no to projects that harm their communities. This is where legal frameworks, like the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, come into play. They affirm the right to free, prior, and informed consent, which is essential for Indigenous self-determination.
So, what's being done at the policy level? Well, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency first acknowledged environmental justice as a priority in 1992, and in 1994, President Clinton signed an executive order requiring federal agencies to consider the impact of their actions on minority and low-income communities.
But has that translated into real change? The reality is mixed. While some progress has been made, these policies have faced setbacks, especially under administrations that rolled back environmental regulations.
It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Recently, though, the Biden administration launched the Justice 40 initiative, aiming to direct 40% of certain federal investments toward disadvantaged communities. It's promising, but still in the early stages.
But it's not just about specific policies. Environmental injustice is also linked to bigger economic forces, like neoliberal policies. Think deregulation, privatization, and a focus on profit over people.
Exactly. It's a system where the market often takes priority over people and the planet. And this leads to corporations cutting corners, neglecting environmental protection, and leaving vulnerable communities to bear the cost.
These are the communities that are already struggling and don't have the resources to fight back. It's a vicious cycle that traps people in hazardous living conditions.
And then we have climate change, a massive threat multiplier. Climate change doesn't necessarily create environmental injustices, but it makes existing inequalities even worse.
Absolutely. Communities already vulnerable to environmental hazards, like communities of color along the Gulf Coast or indigenous communities in the Arctic, are hit hardest by climate change. They're facing more severe hurricanes, rising sea levels, and ecosystem disruptions.
And climate gentrification is another consequence. As wealthier people move to safer areas, marginalized communities are often priced out of their own neighborhoods, creating a double burden.
Despite these challenges, we're seeing inspiring examples of community resilience. Communities aren't just waiting for someone else to fix things, they're taking matters into their own hands.
Exactly. From community-led pollution monitoring to grassroots green infrastructure projects, people are finding innovative solutions that directly address their needs.
This is citizen science meets social justice. Communities gathering their own data documenting health impacts and holding polluters accountable. These local efforts are sparking larger changes too.
So where do we go from here? What can we do as individuals to support this movement and help create a more just and sustainable future?
The first step is education. Understanding the root causes of environmental injustices helps us recognize how our own actions may contribute to the problem. Then, we can make conscious choices, like supporting ethical businesses, reducing consumption, and using our voices to demand change.
It's about becoming conscious consumers and active participants in our communities. Support organizations working on these issues, talk to friends and family, and share information.
Every action, no matter how small, contributes to a larger movement for change. When communities are organized and vocal, policymakers are more likely to listen.
Environmental justice isn't someone else's problem, it's all of ours. It's a collective responsibility.
If we all do our part, from grassroots efforts to global actions, we can create a world where everyone has the right to a clean, healthy, and thriving environment.
That's a world worth fighting for. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to learn more, get involved, and keep pushing for a just and sustainable future.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and let's work together to create a better world.